Welcome to the Drama-Free Living Podcast. It's Dennis and Lisa McIntee, and today we're talking about making mid-year adjustments, right? Because Lisa, it can happen, right? It's because we don't know what we don't know,
right?
And we all typically in January is the time when we all set goals.
All the energy, all the things we want to change.
This is everything I'm going to do. It's going to be amazing. It's going to be awesome, and then I hit the messy middle.
And so then, what we do is we just throw it all out the window. And rather than throwing it all out the window, maybe do some tweaking.
Yeah, and so that's what we want to talk about today because
is how do you tweak and make mid-year adjustments?
Yeah, because it happens because you don't know what you don't know. COVID is a great example, right? We all experienced that great shutdown. And Lisa, I'll never remember part of what we do for a certain select clients is a lot of strategic planning.
Yes.
So January is filled with workshops on strategic planning and really helping clients get clear on what do they want. And I'll never forget, Lisa, I got a lot of clients together in March and got them on Zoom and I took out their strategic plan. I said, guys, see this, what we created? And I just ripped it up right in front of them. And I said, hey, let's start over.
Right.
Because nobody could predict that.
Right. And that's part of making mid-year adjustments.
Absolutely.
Is figuring out when do I let a goal die.
That is a great kind of thing to tackle.
In that situation, like with COVID, so when the broader goal changes and priorities shift, sometimes that's when you have to let the goal die. So along with COVID, it was the third week of March, and your travel schedule was pretty full throughout summer, throughout fall, and
all of a sudden it opened up.
The phone started ringing. Awesome. The phone started ringing, and you didn't want to answer the phone because event after event after event was canceled. Well, at that point, we had set goals in January of the different events we wanted to be at, the different industries that we wanted to be in, the amount of travel that we wanted to do or that you wanted to do, or days that you did not want to travel. Well, at that point, circumstances changed, the broader goal changed, and we had to let our goal die because at that point, our goal no longer became we're going to hit these markers, but then it became we're going to set up some foundational things and we're going to work on some internals, or we're going to switch over into how we can provide value while we're on lockdown. And so we had to let our goal die. So sometimes it's okay. Let the goal die.
Yeah. And it's really this idea of pivoting. Or realigning. And for example, our cars all need realignment sometimes, right? And how many times we go through life and we're driving our car and we have potholes and,
And you hit the curb.
We won't call anybody out on that, right?
Yeah.
But we do these things and it's like, wow, my car needs realignment. Well, sometimes teams need realignments. Sometimes people need realignments. It's you hit different potholes in life and you're like, okay, I'm a little bit out of alignment. I need to bring it back into alignment. And that's really what we're talking about.
Right. And so you let a goal die when that broader goal changes or the priority changes. And you also let a goal die when you discover the reward is no longer worth the risk.
Explain what you mean by that. This is great.
When the reward is no longer worth the risk, you start out and you have a goal of, for instance, I'm going to travel this many days in the year, right?
Yep.
And it's a great goal, and you think it's a healthy balance, and you are able to serve our clients the way you need to when you are on the road, and you're able to serve your clients the way you need to when you're at home and when you're local. And all the way from calls or Zooms or face-to-faces or even the back-end stuff, working with our team. Well, eventually you could discover that this reward is not worth the risk because I'm risking letting some of these things fall on the home side because I've chosen to be out on the road too often. And that's a reward risk. And because you want to try to live it in balance. Now, certain things the reward could be very rewarding if it doesn't put other things into jeopardy. And that's a reward risk balance.
And maybe another way to say it is also that when the price becomes greater than the prize.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
And we're paying all of this price, but the prize is not very good. And so we always want to make the price greater, or the prize greater than the price. We always want to make the reward greater than the risk.
Yes. And then another reason to let a goal die is because it just isn't working. Sometimes we set goals and you know what? It just isn't working.
Well, and it's almost like you got to look at it as an experiment. Because you don't know what you don't know. And so maybe you set a goal and you go through life and you get halfway through and you go, you know what? It's just not working. It was a great experiment, but it's just not working. Let's realign. And just be honest with yourself. Tell yourself the truth. Because teams that can't tell themselves the truth are not very creative.
And you have to look at it as it wasn't a failure, or I'm not a failure. I'm just a lot smarter.
Well, and it's almost like, wow, the Dennis in January, that was the best he knew, right? He was at that place, and now the Dennis midyear, he's a different Dennis. He knows a little bit more. He's a little bit more gifted. He's got some new knowledge. And so, and you almost look at yourself or your organization that way. Is back then, that was the best you knew. And it's this whole idea of goal setting is really a skill. And if it's a skill, that means you can get better at it. And we've discovered, especially doing a lot of strategic planning with and we have organizations that we've done it for over 10 years. Where every quarter, me or a team member is there with that organization, with them goal setting for the quarter, doing yearly retreats. And what I've seen, Lisa, is people get better at goal setting. The goals. I'm thinking of a particular organization in Pennsylvania that we work with in this last quarterly retreat that we had. I was amazed because the conversations were richer, the conversations were more honest, and the goals were more thought through. And they sort of have gotten this habit of hitting goals, but it's because they've created this skill of knowing how to do it. So you look at it as a skill, and you can get better as you continue to use this skill.
Right. And instead of giving up and just completely giving up, we have to adjust. So our kids played soccer growing up. One of our sons played soccer in college, and there's different formations in soccer. There's like 4-5-1, there's 4-3-3, there's 4-4-2, and it's all based on, where your defense is, your midfield, and your strikers are. And you have different formations based on the skill set of your players and who you have on your team and their ability, but you also use different formations based on who you're up against and what you're playing up against. But teams typically will have their favorite formation, and that's kind of how they live by. That's the formation that they're going to use this year, or that's just their formation that they're known for, and then they make adjustments while keeping that formation. But what happens is if you're playing, say, a 4-3-3, so you have three strikers up at front, and one of your key strikers becomes injured, you don't want to throw someone up there that is subpar, right? You're going to move. You're going to adjust your formation mid-season because it is no longer going to work because something has changed, and you're going to have to switch to something like a 4-4-2 because you've lost that striker and you have to make an adjustment. And so there's things like injuries. There's things
you don't
life
even know
is
those
thrown.
things.
And instead of just throwing everything out, we tweak and we make adjustments and we walk in confidence in knowing what we're doing. But when we think about making adjustments, we have far better chances of achieving our goals because we know when we set the goal or when we look at our goals that is just part of it, is we're going to have to make adjustments.
And it's really this ability to continue to adjust and adapt, right? This adaptability, it's an ability to adapt. And I was thinking about, and I don't even remember the name of this tree, but like winds blow, and a tree that's very rigid, it breaks. But a tree that has some bend to it, it'll stand the wind.
Like our willow. We had that bad storm last week. And
that willow will last forever.
Things were blowing everywhere, and there were trees that were down. Well, the Masters, there were, 3 trees that went down, and the Masters, because the winds were so strong, they just came down, and they just broke.
No, this is Masters 2023, so we just want to make sure we...
And But say our willow,
Yeah.
which has a lot of bend to it, it was able to go back and forth with it. And that's the question that we want to ask is where are you with your goals?
Yeah.
And, where are you making progress? What's working and what's not working? And Dennis, you created a fantastic tool, your background foreground tool.
Yeah, right. And so this is an idea of as you continue to go through your year, there are certain things that need to come foreground and certain things that maybe need to come background. It's a personal exercise that you can do for yourself, but we also encourage you to do it with your team. It's called background, foreground, and we'll put in the show notes a way for you to download that tool, and we just want to give it to you as our gift. About every quarter, we have the conversations with our roundtable coaching members. And this is a great exercise to do every quarter where you list out all of your activities, everything that you're doing, and then you ask yourself, okay, what needs to come to the foreground? What are the 3 activities that you need to bring to the foreground? And then how do you maximize those activities?
And you can put this while you're thinking of your goals. In the
Absolutely.
process of moving toward your goals, what are all these activities in relating to this specific goal, and what needs to come to the foreground with this?
Right, because there maybe are some activities that you started at the beginning of the year that are not serving you today. And then step down and go, okay, what are the 3 activities that kind of need to come to the background? We're doing a lot of it, but it's not really producing the results or what we thought it would. So how do we bring it to the background? And then how do we minimize it? So it's a foreground, background exercise. And you sort of look at your life as you're on stage. And there's certain things that need to be front stage and certain things that need to be backstage. And it is a great...
And when the scene changes, you need to pull the people up front on front stage, and the ones that aren't in that scene need to move to the back.
Yeah. And Lisa, I think it's this whole idea of context versus content. And when context changes, content needs to change. And almost like context drives the content. And this is what we mean by that. The context are things like market conditions, right? We don't know what the economy is going to do. It could be political unrest. It could be industry, things that happen in the industry. But as that context changes, the content needs to change. And I remember the Great Shutdown. So a constant complaint that a lot of leaders were getting was they'd show up Monday morning and they'd have a policy and they'd tell their team, hey, this is the policy. This moving forward, this is the policy. Boom, 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 boom. And then by Thursday of the same week, guess what we got, Lisa? We got another policy.
Yeah.
And then people were complaining, why do we always change around here? You never stay the same. Well, the context changed, so the content changed.
Right.
And you really teach your team to look at the context, because you don't know what you don't know. And maybe you've set some goals this year and you need to make some mid-season adjustments, some midyear adjustments going, the context has changed for us a little bit and we need to make those adjustments.
Absolutely. And with that, it's incremental progress. And so when we share with our teams, when we're having to adjust our goals, being able to share the why. Why we hyped up this goal and share the why on why we're making the adjustment. And we could share the situation or the surrounding circumstances that are causing us to change, but being open, being vulnerable, but also allowing the team to bring feedback and group think on, okay, so what can we do from here? And not necessarily seeing changing our goals or mid-year adjustments as failures, but they are things that we're utilizing to get smarter. They're experiments. And we can go through and we can chunk these goals into bite-sized milestones.
And that really is the key. And it really gets back to as you're continuing to change and kind of chunk these down, because sometimes chunking down can be a little bit of a change or a little bit of a pivot. And I think you brought up a great point about sharing your why, because as leaders, we have to sell our how. Here's how we're going to change. Well, people might not like that. That might not be easy to hear. And I always want to step back and really kind of create the why, really sell the why before I ever communicate the how. Now, here's the key thing with the why is when our goals and your goals intersect. For example, just working with a client yesterday, and they have this particular goal about, we don't want to get into some of the particulars, but it sell a certain amount of more products, right? And so, well, gosh, they have salespeople. I don't want to do that. I mean, I got to do this. And it's okay. We're going to sell this amount of products. But here's a great little phrase to get really good at. We're going to sell these many products so that what? Well, so that we stay in business. So that we stay in business so that everybody has a job. Hey, we stay in business. Everybody has a job. Everybody has a job so that we can all live happy lives.
And we stay in business so that everyone has a job, so that we can all live happy lives, so that
we can all be fulfilled. And hey, we have the live your life fulfilled goal. We don't have the sell more widgets goal. We have the live more fulfilled goal. Or another one, when we broke it down, it was like, hey, we have the everybody gets a raise goal.
Hey, I like that one.
Yeah, but nobody has the, oh gosh, I'm really excited about now I have to sell more widgets. It's the, hey, I get a raise this year goal. And you just reframe it in where your why intersects with their why. And it's a great way to create buy-in and collaborate better together.
I love that. I love that. So how do we break goals down into bite-sized milestones? I mean, how do we do that in relation to making mid-year adjustments? What do we do with that?
Well, I think you have to look at activities, right? Because nothing changes until behavior changes. And a lot of times we have these goals, but we don't have activity measurements to the goal.
Yeah.
Right? We're going to sell. Sales is an easy one. We got to sell more widgets. Well, how many phone calls? And break it down to how many visits and how many emails or how many and with every goal, and almost like even backstage goals, sort of the things that are in the background, they also need to have goals. They also need to have measurement systems, because whatever is not measured never improves.
Well, wait a minute. Say that again.
Right. And if you never measure it, you never improve it. If you don't know how it's working, you don't know what you can do to improve.
And you don't know how it's not working.
Yeah. And it goes back to maybe our learning matrix idea. We have a couple other tools that do that for people, but we don't encourage you background, foreground. It's a fantastic way to look at all of your activities and ask, okay, what's working in these activities? What's not working so well? And then what do I do? And really kind of take control and take responsibility for your activity. Right? Because I could have a weight loss goal, but the goal is not going to happen unless I break it down and go, okay, I'm only going to eat so many calories and I'm going to have so much output, and start to measure my calorie intake and start to measure my output. And it's almost like the goal automatically happens. It just kind of by magic
because
happens.
you set systems in place and the goal rolls right along with it.
Well, and it's almost this idea, Lisa, is fascinating, that an airplane never flies in a straight line. You think about it, it really does. Now, you go, well, how does it ever get to where it needs to go? Well, you think about an airplane, right? It sets itself up, it puts the destination in the computer. It knows its goal, right?
It knows the destination.
It knows the destination, right? It doesn't say, hey, we're going to go to New York City, but if it's really, really good weather, we're going to go right up to Boston. Hey, if we get to New York City and it's really great weather, then we're going straight to Boston. Or it says, not so good weather, we're probably going to stop off in Philadelphia and take a rest, right? It says, no, we're going to New York City, right? And then it sets a goal, and then it takes off. It has this activity, it has this energy. But as it's flying, because of turbulence, wind conditions, weather, all these outside environments, the context, right, it starts to veer it off course. But it has feedback mechanisms. It has beacons from the ground that are shooting up. It has instruments in the plane that's continuing to give its feedback. And I think that's how it works, right? The market conditions, the context really just becomes feedback. And you just make these small adjustments. And the airplane just kind of goes back and forth, just making these adjustments as it's going towards its destination. And I think that's how life is. But you have to be comfortable with that. You have to know, like, there are going to be mid-season adjustments. It is just part of life because context changes all the time.
How do you get comfortable with that?
That's a great question. I think, first of all, that growth mindset, really realizing a little bit that that's normal.
Yeah.
I think sometimes people think like, oh my gosh, it's got to be perfect. Well, gosh, Lisa, I think there's very few things in life that are perfect, right? Because if something is perfect, you're saying, hey, this can never be improved. And so really everything can be improved. so having this idea that we're always changing, we're always improving, we don't know what we don't know, and giving ourselves a little bit of grace and just being a little bit lighter on ourselves, not so hard on ourselves.
We covered a lot of this information on the previous podcast on the learning matrix.
Absolutely. And that it's there for that podcast.
That kind of set the foundation for making mid-year adjustments. So if you are in the middle of making mid-year adjustments and you need to get the right mindset of how do I do this and how do I go into a more of a growth state rather than a fixed mind state, go back, go listen to the Learning Matrix podcast, and it'll help you get the mindset and the idea behind it so you can step into the functionality of making mid-year adjustments with these goals that, have probably changed.
And almost like treat it, this is normal. And it's this idea that mindset drives motivation. Your motivation is really driven by your mindset. And for example, I know we say we motivate people, and sometimes we feel like we need to make mid-season adjustments because we're not motivated. But Lisa, can you really motivate anybody? You really can, right? What you can do is you can come back to your motive and get really, really clear on that motive. And my motive drives my motivation. And having that mindset of what's the motive, what are other people's motives, and really wrapping your brain around that. And I think as you continue to measure these goals, it's almost like, constant goal achievement and constant measurement. It really kind of makes the impossible possible. And sometimes when you look out and you think it's impossible, it kind of makes the impossible possible because your brain only goes to work on what it believes is possible. And that's why as we continue to go up a level and make these next big leaps, it creates new possibilities. At least we're doing things today that literally I thought 20 years ago were impossible.
I didn't even,
Maybe 10 years ago, right? We're at certain places and we have certain team members and we're doing certain things. And when we have certain things today that literally I thought 20 years ago, it's just never going to happen. It's just not possible.
I think 20 years ago, not only was there the thought it's not possible, but it's so far out there that it wasn't even in the thought of is it possible or not possible. It was beyond the thought process.
And I think people always move towards what they believe is possible. And what you're doing as you continue to goal set and make these adjustments is you're creating new possibilities. You're creating new ways of thinking. Because I know many times the problems and the challenges are not really even the real issue. It's how I think about those challenges and problems. And if I can continue to change my mind about those problems, my strategies change. And so this is really a mindset of continuing to make change, continuing to adapt. And so, listen, we want to encourage you to download the foreground, background thinking exercise. It'll really help you know what are some of the adjustments, what are some things that need to be foreground, that need to become background, and it'll help you make those adjustments.
Okay, so I have a question for you. So we're talking about making mid-year adjustments, adjusting our goals, or maybe letting some goals die. And seeing them as experiments, seeing them as broken into milestones. What happens if we don't let a goal die? What happens if we don't? There's a goal, and not only does it need adjustments, it just needs to go away, but we decide we're going to stick with it and just see it through because that's what I said I was going to do. And
by golly, I keep my word.
And I'm going to keep my word, and I'm going to do what I said I was going to do, so you do it to your detriment. Your team does it to the detriment. What do we do with that?
I think getting really clear on these emotions that you have with it, because, gosh, how frustrating is that?
I would be frustrated as a team member.
Absolutely.
If I knew something was not working and my higher up said, no, this is what we said we were going to do, and we're going to just go for it.
Yeah, well, it comes back to this idea that all progress starts when you just tell the truth, right? And so if the horse is dead, get off it, right? Stop trying to ride a dead horse. It's dead. Just tell the truth, right? Get off the horse, shoot the horse, bury the horse, and go get another horse. And being really comfortable with just telling yourself the truth and being okay with being wrong.
Well,
being honest with being wrong, right? And here's what I've seen. I've had to come to our team sometimes and just say, guys, this is what I thought, and I was wrong. And this is what I said, and now that I look back on it, I was wrong. And sometimes we think that people are going to lose respect for us, but Lisa, here's what's fascinating. They've respected me even more. Mm-hmm. It's like I created even more buy-in because, listen, we've all had times where we're wrong.
Yeah, and you were man enough to admit it. And when we're a big enough person to admit when we're wrong, the other people, especially if they're your team, and you're on the managerial level, or you're a higher up, or you're a director, it gives them permission. It gives everyone permission to come and admit that they're wrong also.
Because that's what I want to know. Yeah. Right? If they've made a mistake, I want them to be transparent and honest because it's almost like sunlight is the best disinfectant.
Absolutely. And if their team has set a goal and it's bad and it needs to, rather than them gritting through it and sticking with it, and because that's what they reported, that's what they told their director, this was the goal, and now they have to perform on it. If you as a director admit when you are wrong, then it allows your team, maybe they have set a goal and they realize this is just not going to work. And it gives them the freedom and the liberty to approach you and say, we made a mistake, this was wrong, and we need to adjust it. We need to completely change this goal or completely scrap this program.
Yeah, and listen, it's scary for leaders to do that. And it's scary for team members to do that. And so we just want to encourage you, if you're the leader, you go first. Okay, you go first. You become transparent first, and you're going to find it from your team. So, Lisa, for you, takeaway, big thought. I'll tell you mine is that I have to get better at looking at the context.
Yeah,
I'm pretty dogmatic, pretty hard-headed at times, and a little bit I set goals, and by golly, we're going to hit them no matter what. No matter if I kill the team and kill my clients and kill myself in the process, we're going to get the goal. And I think I have to get better at looking at context and allowing small adjustments. So that was really helpful for me today. What about you?
For me, it is the idea of when I am honest and transparent with those around me, it gives them permission and freedom to make mistakes. If I'm honest and transparent about my mistakes and my shortcomings, it gives them the freedom to be honest and transparent about their mistakes and their shortcomings because they see that I know that I'm human, and therefore most likely I will view them as human as well.
Yeah. So we want to give you a free gift today. There in the show notes, background, foreground, a great thinking exercise that you can use. And we want to encourage you, listen, get better at this, okay? Because when you get better, everything around you really improves and gets better. So thanks for being with us on the Drama Free Living Podcast.